Hey, good day. Welcome to a foreigner in the Philippines. With so many, we're doing so many updates almost daily on the house of James and Jessica, and they're working very hard at it and making some great gains. We have so many different comments on it that I felt that I would make a comment of my own. The first comment is that I am a builder myself. I have my own opinions, I have my own ways of doing things, and guess what? James has his. Now, let me tell you what it was like when I said that I was going to build my own house. First of all, I'm an old fart, so who would think that I would be able to build a house? I spoke to my brother-in-law, Timio, and I said, I'm going to build my house. And he said, well, who's going to help you? And I said, I'm going to build it alone. I'm going to build it myself, single-handed. He said, you'll need someone, well, won't you need someone to help you? And I said, I'm going to do it myself. Where was I? When I said that I was going to build my own house and I spoke to Timio, he, of course, quietly spoken, Timio, he'll just smile at anything that you say, and he will say, well, won't you need some help? Well, that was because he visualized that I would build the house in his method, which I didn't do. Now, back then, we had to bring all of our materials up a narrow path that was wide enough for a carabao to walk, dragging a bamboo sled. This may sound like a huge exaggeration, like I'm dressing it up to be theatrical. It's not true. That's how it had to be done. And if you want to know exactly what it was like, you can go back and look at the early motorcycle ride down to the road on the path as it used to be, right from the house. So I made my statement and I said, I'm going to build it myself. How are you going to do that? I said, I'm going to build it of metal stud. Now, there's a very good reason for why I would choose metal stud. Because I can lift it. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to be raising wall structures of wood. So anyway, it started off, and I started off in an atmosphere of, shall we say, tacit ridicule. People looked at it and didn't believe it. Okay, so it's just been run out of town again, but whether it will stay out, I really don't know. So I decided that I would make it out of metal stud for very good reasons. Knowing that the materials that that I was going to be working with had to be brought up on a bamboo sled. You can actually see videos of all of this. It put certain restrictions on what I was going to do. For one thing, I certainly wasn't going to be mixing concrete, and for another, I certainly wasn't going to be hauling hollow block and laying hollow block and all of that. So I decided that I would make it out of rebar, and so my first request of Manurado was if he could provide me with 6 or so support posts. And of course he said, what's the measurement? How long do you need them? And I said, I just need them probably about, say, 6 foot max. That would be, in fact, it wouldn't even be that, about 5 foot max. And he laughed, of course, because a crazy foreigner, it was so stupid that he didn't realize that if you bedded the post 2 feet into the ground and then 2 feet to suspend the floor over, a grown man wouldn't be able to stand in the remaining 2 or 3 feet. See, so I took a lot of ridicule in that, a lot of advice about how I should do it. Even Nanai said, well, how's he going to do that? I mean, this is stupid. And they all had a good laugh, but out of respect and with that traditional awe of foreigners, they didn't say anything. So I built a platform, and then on the platform I built my house. And the house is still standing, and it's actually doing very well, and it's made of metal stud. Now, I had so many people second guessing me, it grew to be quite old. And now James has the same thing. Now, one thing that should be made clear is that James is an experienced contractor. He has worked, his own story, which you may have heard him tell, is that he's been building since he was like 10 years old. In other words, he's been a helper at 10, encouraged probably by his dad. I'm supposing things here, assuming things, and his dad encouraged him to take up the tools, which he did, and which he then became, if I know how it works, he became a gopher. He went and fetched this and fetched that, give me the hammer, give me the chisel, and he grew to know the tools, how they worked, what is a spirit level. All of these things became known to him, and it would be obvious that he would go into the construction industry as soon as he was legal work age. Now for me, that means that I don't go down to his building site saying, don't you think you should do it this way? Because I've talked about this before, that as an artist and a sculptor, I've often sculpted things, and when people have looked at them, if it was, say, I remember one particular funny incident where I made a static display, but it was of a robot, an Amazon robot. And a lady came up and said, why did you do the mouth like that? Could it possibly be that there's an answer to a question like that? Well, did I do it like what? Well, like that. And I told you that in the end, I learned to say, my stock answer was, when people said, why did you do it like that? Was because I'm not you. I do things in my way. In the end, when you make anything, when you create anything, make your mistakes, like we've said, not my original thought, but one that was voiced by one of the famous motivational speakers. He said, if a thing's worth doing, it's worth doing wrong. In other words, make your mistakes. The mistakes that you learn from are real lessons. Now, I look at what James is doing, and even though I wouldn't do it like that, why on earth would I be so disrespectful as to say, you don't need to do it that way? I wouldn't do it that way. When I was building my office desk, I had someone say, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do it that way. I wouldn't put those studs on. I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do that. And there's nothing wrong with looking at something and thinking, I wouldn't do it like that. But what is the purpose, when something has already been done, to saying, I wouldn't do it like that? Why are you doing it like that? Should it be stronger, weaker, longer, bigger, smaller? People will do what they do, and they do it best when they're encouraged to do it their way. Now, the little house that Nanai lives in, it has a joint. I'm saying a wood joint. Nanai isn't into the other joints, okay? But there's a support pillar that is joined together. Can I possibly quickly sketch it? It's holding the roof up, okay? So it's holding the roof up, and it's made of two pieces of a branch of a tree, and it looks like actually I've done that wrong. It should be that way. Now I don't know whether you can see that, but look, if you look at that, no carpenter in the West will take a support post and join two pieces of wood together when the load is being put on to the pillar down. It's coming, all of the force is coming down, and to put two pieces together like this in a Western way of thinking would not make any sense at all. Now, how do we know it's any good? Well, a good carpenter will argue against that all day long. It's been up there now for, I think, 40 years. So I think so far it's going quite well and doing its job. And there are several of that kind of joint around where they've taken two pieces and they've put them together like that, and it works. It's withstood typhoons for over 40 years. Can you imagine that? Over 40 years. So I think it's pretty good. I remember fairly new freeways that were close to me in Silmar, that when the earthquake came, whole centre sections just fell down. That's even with the modern, extremely stringent codes that they have in California. So, am I going to relay those comments on? The comments that have been made, that no, that it's got to be stronger than that. It should be 6 of that instead of 4 of that, and it should be or 7 of that, or it should be 12 mil instead of 10 mil. And then someone says, well, actually, we don't know. We don't know what the mix is of the concrete, how strong it is. We don't know how many rebar. We don't know. In fact, we don't really know anything about what's being done, and you're only seeing a work in progress. So it's interesting, isn't it, that people feel that they can make these what they obviously, in the best of faith, I'm not knocking the idea that people are offering their help, they're making it thinking it's going to change the mind of an experienced contractor. Apart from anything, James's house is a work in progress. You get that? It's a work in progress, and the bits that you may be commenting on are yet to be done. So, when I go down there with respect and say, do you have a minute? Can you tell us what you're doing, how it's going? And I try to talk as an equal, but as a respectful equal. I notice that this is very much a characteristic of America. When I had a workshop studio and I was doing I was doing special commissions. I would make to customized standards. I would make pieces of furniture, and I would go and I would measure them up. I would do some sketches, and I would show the person, not blueprints, because blueprints don't mean very much to most people. I would show them a conceptual drawing. Now, I've showed you some of my conceptual drawings, and I would do those, you know, probably on the spot, like I just did this little one here. And along with the customer, we would agree on the basic idea of what I was going to do. Now, he or she, actually I worked a lot with the wife of families that I was doing work with for some reason, probably because they were there more often than the man. But anyway, obviously we would get input from the husband as well, but mainly the wife was the one. Nobody can nitpick like a woman, believe me. If you're putting anything up that is supposed to be level, you better damn well make sure that it is, because a woman can see something that is an eighth of an inch. This is an eighth of an inch. Look at it. Put it behind there. There's the little devil. It's an eighth of an inch, and a woman can see that. So that's what I would do. Now, I would have people come into my workshop, and they would leaf through my portfolio, and they'd look at things that I'd done, and they'd look at what I was doing. And the first part of the conversation might be, wow, I don't know how you managed to do that. I really don't, you know. And then they would start criticizing. Hence the lady that said, why did you do the mouth like that? And it always reminds me of, I keep telling you, maybe if you look this guy up look him up on YouTube. I haven't looked him up myself, but perhaps I should, because he is a wonderful example of human interest stories that are based on character studies of what people are, what they're like. When I had people come into, I had someone who was a teacher. He was a teacher, a technical teacher at one of the local colleges, a prestigious college, by the way, and he taught woodcraft, he taught metalcraft. He was a clever guy, and he came into my shop, and his first words were very, very complimentary. He said, "Wow, this is where all the magic happens," because he'd seen my work. And then when I continued to work while we were talking, and I was looking for a drill bit, and I picked up a drill bit and looked at it, and he looked at it as well, and he says, that's not a steel bit, that's a wood bit, okay? Can you imagine that here's a man who comes in and thinks that what I'm doing is magical, and then he's going to instruct me as to the difference between a drill bit which is meant for wood and a drill bit which is meant for steel. I wonder, how does that work? I don't know. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that happens. And it happens a lot in America. Now, with people who are not used to what I would call workshop etiquette, they are likely to come in and, without thinking, tactlessly make suggestions which are silly and inappropriate, at least. Well, when you ask another craftsman to come in and help you, normally what happens is that you would have a workshop etiquette. If it's your workshop, then no matter how skilled the man is that is coming in, unless you had said to him, I want you to come in and advise me on how I should go on this, then he'll come in and he'll do just that. But if you just say, can you come in and just give me a hand? I need, you know, no insult, but I need someone to hold stuff and all of that, and we can talk while we're doing it, good friends. And he would come in and he would say, what do you want me to do? As a gesture of respect for the fact that it's your shop. Now, then it really works. Otherwise, you have a situation where you've got that battle. I have somebody who always thinks in different things, and he comes in always as an equal, and there's no workshop etiquette. And so if you say, okay, we're going to let's clean the workshop first of all. So we'll start at this end and work down to that end. And this type of person would say, well, why don't we start at the other end and work down to this end? It's the same thing, but it means that you are in opposition. What you're really looking for is someone who will come in, and when you say, we'll start at this end, says, yes, sir. And if you are going to another person's workshop or another person's building site, you say, what do you want me to do? And if he wants you to sweep the floor, you're there to help. And you sweep the floor. You don't say, oh, just a minute. You know, you didn't get me in here, super craftsman that I am, to sweep a bloody floor, did you? That's not the way that it happens. And Al Reed, getting back to Al Reed, was the master of doing a sketch that would be based on the kind of person that knew everything. And he always had the same voice. And it was always the lead up was we've all had those situations where we're putting a shelf up, and someone comes in to visit, and they come in to watch. We know him very well. He's that know-it-all. He's the one that says, you're not going to put that bloody shelf up there like that, are you? Oh my God, talk about the uneducated. That's going to fall down. How are you going? And he would do that, and it'd be very funny. You can probably find him, Al Reed, on YouTube. If I think about it, the next time I'm browsing myself, I'll look him up. He's bound to be on there. A British comedian from a few years ago, right? About 1900 and frozen to death. So, to get to the comments that are being made, they're appreciated, but maybe you should not think of humility as being a four-letter word, and you should understand that someone is going to do it their way. If they're good at what they do and have experience at what they do, they're going to do it their way. So you may ask, how many pieces of rebar do you have on that? Have you found that what would be the minimum requirement for that kind of load? You can ask these questions, but don't assume, surely, we're not going to assume that whoever is doing that job, and let's face it, what James is doing down there is he's building a house. And the problems that he has had to have knowledge of are quite extensive. He's building a house on a hill. He's had to level the ground. He's had to work with, as he said in the last video, one of the biggest challenges, and this is, to me, is an extremely valid point. One of the biggest challenges is in working with materials which are not of the same standard as he is used to. So, here's a man, and I've seen some of the photographs of his work. I should encourage him to put some pictures up on his channel so that you can see the kind of thing that he has been involved in. But he does fine work, and he should make his own judgment. Well, he will make his own judgments. Some of the block that he is working with does not meet the right standards. He's talking about using an 8-inch wide block when here the common block that walls, even retaining walls, are made of is a 4-inch block, and that 4-inch block you can crush under your foot. They don't allow them to dry for too long, and so there's possibly a 4 or 5% breakage when you have stuff delivered, even though they're actually very careful because they know that the breakages will be high if they're not careful. So continue to watch and have a look and see how somebody else does it. That's the trick. That's what being having a slightly humble way of looking at things. There's always a chance that he might make a very fine house, which maybe you couldn't do. Someone said the house that we had made in such and such a place was made of concrete and so and so, and they speak with authority, but James is doing it. That's the difference. For all the people that criticized how I built my house, I am the one that is doing it. For all the things that we do when Beth and I are able to work at helping people, there are many people who would do things differently, but we're here doing it. And it's a respect for the person who is doing it that should lead you to perhaps wait and see. This is not, I'm not lecturing someone. Someone made a joke and said, don't lecture me on that. Okay, I'm only joking. So in other words, it's all right for other people to make a comment, but if I respond, it's lecturing, okay? Well, anyway, just do as you're told, okay? Or go to your room. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here with us, and keep looking, because James is working hard on his house and making progress. Bye for now.